Guys, something in crypto feels extremely off. So, obviously, yesterday the markets sold off because of Oracle, which, those of you that don't know, it's basically a temperature gauge when it comes to artificial intelligence, tech, risk on assets, all this kind of stuff, because they pretty much showed that they have very low margins when it comes to their business model. And so it leaves, it begs the question, how are all these other artificial intelligence plays going to fare when it comes to overall dominance when it comes to stocks or whatever the case may be. And so obviously crypto is heavily affected when it comes to the tech sector, risk on assets, all that kind of stuff. So now obviously gold is still going at all-time highs. We have the S&P bounce, it's at an all-time high today. Bitcoin kind of, it can't really catch its footing when it comes to these, market, I would say like market corrections or crashes, whatever. And it really looked to be just like a leverage flush when it comes to the markets. Now, those of you that also don't know what leverage flushes are, pretty much whenever the froth in the market happens, you have all these exchanges and traders, they pretty much open up these positions, in leverage. So it's not really because people are selling these assets in real life. Like you're probably not selling any of your spot, holdings. I'm not selling any of mine. Majority of people, I would argue, are not selling any of their crypto right now. And usually what happens is you have these exchanges such as Binance, they pretty much send all these Ethereum, Bitcoin, Solana, they send it to these market makers that pretty much crash the prices and liquidate these traders. But what's been really weird is Bitcoin is obviously been going down, and whenever Bitcoin seems to drop right now, it drops like maybe 1 to 5%. You see altcoins go down like 20%, but BNB seemingly continues to make all-time highs, and you have to wonder, like, why is this going on? And it's kind of weird because, the exchange that's pretty much in charge of liquidating all these traders is Binance, and BNB is their native token. So it's not a good look for crypto. It's not a good look for Binance. There's a lot of questions. You notice like every single time Binance posts something, you always see people under the comments like, why are you sending so much funds to Wintermute that you appear to not even have? It looks like they're, sending customer funds to these market makers to flush the price and liquidate these traders. And when it comes to exchanges, they don't necessarily make money off the assets. They make money off of the traders, the fees, the liquidations. And so they pretty much play like Pac-Man, if you want to like visualize it, where you have certain traders in positions, either taking short positions or long positions. And so they see where all this liquidity is, and they pretty much, use different assets to flush the price of Bitcoin or crypto or whatever the case may be in both directions. But it's just really weird to me that whenever the crypto markets seemingly tank and Bitcoin, it's kind of in limbo. It's kind of deciding the direction that it wants to go. And it should be performing, in my opinion, a lot better than what it's currently doing, because you have, risk on assets and, flights to safety like gold going all-time highs. You have heavy metals, precious metals, they're all making like massive tears in in price action. And it's really weird to see, in my opinion, that, something like Bitcoin, which is basically created for this kind of environment, it just feels very suppressed. And you could make the argument that, oh, well, maybe there is some suppression going on because, governments understand this and they want to accumulate as much as possible. But in my opinion, governments, they're not like, a lot of like normies and retail people think that these exchanges and people and governments are stupid. But like, honestly, they've known about Bitcoin since forever. They've had all this time to accumulate, and I can't really see the argument in that. It just feels off. And especially when like BNB is making all-time highs and just like climbing the ranks on like, the top 10 cryptocurrencies. It's really weird. And you have to look at the timing. Obviously Astra just launched, which is Binance's basically like decentralized perpetuals exchange. And they've blown every single other exchange out of the water when it comes to trading volume. And you can make the argument that, people are trying to farm an airdrop, but, all signs kind of point to like wash trading, which happens a lot on other exchanges and different kind of like chains as well. But it's really weird to see, in my opinion. And I think it's just, you see CZ getting out of jail, and now he's kind of like the main like KOL on crypto right now, kind of like, talking about meme coins and like how good Aster is and like what it's doing, and, Trust Wallet, which is also a Binance owned wallet. You just see the whole like Binance ecosystem just like going crazy. And when you understand that Binance is not a US regulated exchange, and we're coming into a lot of pro-regulation, a lot of regulation just across the board when it comes to, crypto assets, stable coins, different governments trying to adopt Bitcoin. I think that Binance kind of sees the writing on the wall. Once all this kind of happens, they're not going to have basically the monopoly that they used to have. And it's kind of like a Game of Thrones when it comes to cryptocurrency, because obviously like Asia and China, like they dominate, a huge market share when it comes to like BNB and different kind of like Asian based cryptos. And then you have like the US based cryptos. And there's a lot of rivalry when it comes to like these crypto, currencies. I know, famously like SBF was like really bullish on Solana. And so him and CZ had a lot of beef between Solana and BNB. And basically, CZ was a reason that, or I guess it led to the reason of, FTX going under and just all the, cascading liquidations and all this kind of stuff. And so you have to understand, kind of the lore and like the kind of the history that goes on behind the scenes, because, it is a business. And I think that Binance sees crypto as a business only. Like, I don't really think that they're here to change the world with crypto or anything like that. I think that they're, a big player in this game, along with CZ, who's the CEO or was the CEO. And now, obviously he went to jail, and now there's like a new CEO, and there's just a lot of speculation with, what's going on. But like, why is Binance and BNB like so prominent right now? Why is like BNB still making all-time highs similar to gold, while like, all the altcoins are kind of going down in the opposite direction? Because cryptocurrency in particular is very correlated. Like if you look at pretty much any single kind of chart that you look at, they all look identical no matter what it is. It's just like some of them go up a little bit more than others, but realistically speaking, they all look very similar. So I don't know, it just feels very weird right now, especially where we are at the 4-year cycles, which I don't even think I don't think those are even going to be relevant anymore, because of all these, spot ETFs, these Bitcoin treasury companies. The monetary system is going up. Like if you look at everything from a global liquidity standpoint, there's just more money in the system than there ever was. And so Bitcoin's not really following traditional paths. I think that it's just kind of going up with the natural progression of how much money is being flooded into the system. And so I still remain pretty much bullish when it comes to Bitcoin. And I think that, this cycle more than ever kind of shows you need to really be picky with the assets that you're choosing to be into, because they can kind of come and go. And if they don't have attention, they're not going to get as much liquidity and price appreciation like it used to be, because there's just so many more cryptos competing for the number one spots. And, I do think that right now, like the wave is clearly BNB. I think the BNB is going on this like little super cycle, so they say. And there's a lot of meme coins going on. And so I would just say, like, be very cautious, be aware of what's going on in the crypto space. Always have your own strategy, and don't get caught up in the noise of what you see KOLs doing, because a lot of these are just, undisclosed paid promotions, with the intention to give a certain narrative of what's going to happen, and nobody really knows. So I think that at the end of the day, you need to do what makes the most amount of sense for you, and continue to do your research and educate yourself on the crypto market. So hope this content, finds you well. I hope you like the content. Smash the like button. I'm going to be doing a giveaway at 1,000 subs, so be on the lookout for that. Make sure you subscribe, share this video with a friend. I'll see you all soon. Bye.